So the thing with Loki is I never actually knew how the show would go, and the special thing about these Marvel shows is that you never actually know what to expect.
What did you expect?
Maybe except with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but WandaVision really surprised me and I had little to no expectations from the show. Just the usual Marvel formula to give a good show, but it really got me hooked. But with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it was more down to earth, and underneath the action and the jokes, both shows had something more to deliver. Wanda and how she deals with her trauma in WandaVision, Bucky Barnes and his path to redemption, Sam Wilson's acceptance of the call to be able to take up the mantle and be his truest self in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. These themes stood out to me, and maybe it could be because of the amazing action scenes in the Marvel movies, but I don't really take time to appreciate these themes as I do in the series. And Loki dropped. With Loki, I thought, what can they do with a character that would inspire me? But it turns out they had been developing him long before, just that I finally took notice of it since they don't have a constraint of a 2-hour movie which must keep you entertained till it concludes, hence the action scenes. But it turns out the TV shows don't really have to follow that format. Once they are able to satisfy the narrative and tell a cohesive story, they have accomplished what they want to accomplish.
I am Loki, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
The character of Loki, in my opinion, is grounded in identity. Who he is, what others think of him, and what he thinks of himself. The Japanese say you have 3 faces. The face you show the world, the face you show your closest friends and family, and the face you never show anyone. That is the truest reflection of who you really are. Tom Hiddleston once said, Loki is about identity and integrating the disparate fragments, the many selves that he can be and the many selves that we are. Loki's journey in the MCU is an interesting one. He is first introduced as a villain, a god burdened with glorious purpose to rule, but ultimately fails over and over again. One would say Loki is a tragic character, destined to fail, to be the person who makes others be the best version of themselves.
You weren't born to be king, Loki. You were born to cause pain and suffering and death. That's how it is. That's how it was. That's how it will be. All so that others can achieve their best versions of themselves.
What? Because I'm the monster parents tell their children about at night?
And that's honestly quite awful.
But you ridiculous bureaucrats will not dictate how my story ends!
It's not your story, Mr. Laufeyson. It never was.
But it is his story though. Everyone is an author of their own life, so Loki is constantly writing his own story of who he wants to be. Loki is a deeply insecure person who projects his own fear and insecurities onto the world and is trying to fix himself by fixing the world. His desire to conquer is stemmed from his regrets, to remove freedom so that people wouldn't have to feel the shame of their own decisions.
For nearly every living thing, choice breeds shame and uncertainty and regret.
I could have done it! For you! For all of us!
There's a fork in every road, yet the wrong path always taken.
You give up the Tesseract! You give up this poisonous dream! You come home.
He tries to write his own narrative. Is he defined by his position, his blood, or his redemption? Loki has been second to Thor, always in his shadow. So, to remove himself from Thor's narrative, he decided to create one for himself, a new identity, not to be the second, but an equal, as a king of his own realm. As Thor is destined to rule Asgard, he made his to rule Midgard.
Who controls the would-be king? I am a king, not here!
To commit to his new role, he pushes away everyone he loves, and his arrogance caused the death of his mother. In light of the events after his mother dies, we see another part of Loki. For a brief moment, we get to witness a bit of genuine emotion from Loki. He was devastated at his mother's death. Even though he put on a facade, his mother could always see through him. He put down his walls, and for the first time in a long time, Thor sees Loki completely defeated due to the events that transpired. She was the only one who could see through his facade, and now she's gone. The performer has now been ripped off the stage and forced to take off his mask. This traumatic event made Loki want to change his narrative from the would-be king to the accepted king by using his most powerful skill, deception. Loki always had a desire to be accepted, to seem equal to his brother, so when he finally accepted his new role, he plays the part well, until his untimely demise. The time variant Loki in the series, in a moment of weakness, watches how his life unfolds and is filled with a myriad of emotions, from guilt to regrets to pride and lastly horror. His glorious purpose has been put on display for him to see, and he laughs at the thought of it. Finally, the mask of the villain shatters and we get to see the true Loki once more. The performer has finally taken off his mask. At this point, whoever Loki is or whatever he does in the show will be free from any influence from before and is now given a chance to write his story the way he sees fit.
I don't enjoy hurting people. I do it because I have to, because I've had to.
Okay, explain that to me.
Because it's part of the illusion. It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear.
A desperate play for control.
Sylvie is the character that was introduced in the series as the variant who has a grudge against the time variant authority. Hiding in time periods before cataclysmic events occurred, she was invisible to the TVA. She was hell-bent on taking the TVA down until our Loki arrived and became a deterrent to her plans. Sylvie was abducted by the TVA at a very young age because her existence was causing a branch in the timeline. Maybe she was not Loki enough, hence her hate for the TVA. Because when she was confronted by Ravonna Renslayer about her Nexus event and why she was taken away, her answer was,
I don't remember.
Sylvie was a contrast of Loki. She was everything he wasn't. She was the literal inversion of his character. She was a female Loki. Her name was Sylvie, lawful daughter. He was told about her adoption at a very young age. And looking at how things would have turned out, she might have turned out different from the other Lokis. So as they continue to spend time with each other, they gradually bring down their walls, mirroring each other. They're not so different. They might have had different circumstances which made them different people, but they both share the pain of the character they are forced to play in the narrative, hence developing a certain kind of love for each other. This can be seen in two ways: the narcissistic way of Loki falling in love with himself, or finally loving and accepting himself for who he is and who he can be. I personally love Loki and Sylvie's relationship because at this point, Loki has given himself a chance to fall in love, albeit a variant of himself. This is a part of growth of his character to finally drop his guard and fall in the dangerous crevice we call love. While awaiting their death on Lamentis 1, Sylvie is saddened by this written destiny of theirs because it seems like no matter how hard they try, they cannot change their destiny. But Loki, who hasn't given up on his journey just yet, rejects this, and in a hopeless, optimistic manner, he assures her that Loki's are survivors too. So in giving Sylvie a slither of hope in their final moments, they cause a Nexus event which saves their lives. Their refusal to accept fate changed their fate, giving them an opportunity to continue to write their story. When Loki gets pruned, he awakens as a place out of time. The void, which contains everything that needs to be pruned in order to prevent timelines from branching. And here we get to see more variants of Loki. This doesn't bother me at first, but then I began to have a thought. Most of the existing beings in the void timelines were Lokis.
What did you expect?
Lokis are being removed from their timelines for one reason or another and brought here because they disrupt the so-called sacred timeline. And it's quite sad because in the MCU, The Loki we are shown who had some sort of a full life ended up dying at the hands of Thanos, and the ones who escaped their fate in one way or another are discarded to the void. So the sacred timeline states that Loki is supposed to die at the hands of Thanos, or he or she can't exist. Lokis are supposed to play a certain part, and if they deviate from that part, they cannot exist anymore. They are destined to play the part of a villain and meet an unfortunate fate, and they cannot change this fate. Richard E. Grant plays the classic Loki, whose illusion casting is greater than all the others. Had himself pruned when he wanted to get back home to his family after being isolated from them for so long, self-reflecting on his purpose. Kid Loki, who did what no other Loki could do and killed Thor.
I killed Thor.
Due to the action or inaction these Lokis made, caused them to be discarded and unable to write their own story. But then again, this can be seen as a good thing, that the only beings left in this discarded reality are Lokis due to their ability to survive, while all others that are sent here are being erased by the cloud-eating monster Eliath. Sylvie prunes herself in order to find out Loki, and at this part join forces with Kid Loki and Classic Loki to enchant Eliath, biding them enough time to make way to the end of time. Richard E. Grant's Classic Loki sacrificed himself in order for his younger counterpart to achieve what he couldn't, concluding his glorious purpose with the greatest illusion ever to be casted by a Loki, creating a pathway to victory, to the end of time, to find out who is at the end of time, pulling the strings, the one behind the TVA. Arriving at the end of time, Loki and Sylvie have reached their goal at last. To the person behind the TVA, Sylvie's quest was originally revenge for the TVA for ruining her life, causing her to live as an outcast, continuously hiding at the apocalyptic points in time to survive. Whereas Loki was to take over the TVA and to rule. But in the end, he seems to have outgrown the whole conqueror shtick and just wants to be able to live his life the way he sees fit, to write his own story. He has been able to accept and forgive himself by the love he finds in Sylvie, hence the ability to give up his foolish quest to be ruler. Kang, or Immortus, or the one who remains, presents them with an option to be able to assimilate themselves into the current timeline or kill him and cause multiple evil versions of him to be born due to the branching timelines. Loki believes in Kang and wants to consider his options, but Sylvie doesn't and goes ahead to kill him. This brings them back to how they first met, where they were enemies fighting each other with different goals. But this time, Loki is not fighting for himself, he is fighting for something greater than himself. This wasn't about ruling, it was about trying to prevent the fabric of reality from breaking. But Sylvie doesn't see it that way. All her life, she had dreamt to have her revenge against the people who destroyed her life since she was a kid. And for what? A reason so insignificant they couldn't even remember enough to share. This is where it all ends. This is where she has her revenge. The script has been flipped, and they both fight to protect their ideologies. Loki begs her to reconsider, but she doesn't trust him.
What was I thinking, trusting you?
Really? That's what you think of me?
After all, he is Loki, and you know better than to trust a Loki. But this story was about going against nature, against the norms of the story, and trying to write your own, free from pre-existing scripts of doom and patterns of deceit. He then appeals to her heart.
Sylvie, stop. Stop.
I've been where you are. All I know is I don't want to hurt you. I just want you to be okay.
For a second there, you might have thought that worked due to the kiss they shared. But in that brief instance, she flips the script and betrays Loki in order to accomplish her goal, killing Kang, causing the distraction of the flow of time as she sits in shame. Loki sits in tears, as her rejection could mean that he's not capable of changing and he has no authorship. He could not reach her and he sits alone. His glorious purpose is to be alone for all time, always. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and comment and subscribe and let me know what you felt about the show in general. Until then, keep moving forward.